be ready here in probably another 30 seconds.
Yeah, just let me know, Jim. Just give me a signal, that's all. Yeah, Jim's gonna give me a signal. Good. Okay. Okay, stand by.
County City Council for January 11, 2021 is now in session. Roll call, please.
Council President, Mr. Arcaro,
Present?
Mr. Emery,
Here.
Mr. Gaw,
Here.
Mr. Kozeski,
Here.
Mrs. Ledford,
Here.
Mrs. McVoy,
Here.
Mr. Moiseo,
Here.
City Manager, Mr. Hockaday,
Here.
Science Director, Mr. Williams,
Here.
Law Director, Mr. Smith.
Here.
Okay, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll move on to approval of the meeting minutes for December 21st, 2020. Is there any alterations or corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion,
I make a motion.
Seconded by Mrs. McVoy.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gaw,
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, the meeting minutes for December 21st, 2020 have been approved. We have an awards presentation tonight, and with us here in council chambers is Scott Edwards. If you'd like to come forward, please. Okay, Mr. O'Connell, if you would read this into the record, please.
Certificate of Achievement, Spartan of the Month. The Spartan of the Month for January is Scott Edwards. Scott is a ninth grade student at Conneaut High School. His nominating teacher, Mr. Gabe Cellini, wrote, "In spite of facing adversity during the beginning of the school year, Scott has persevered in and out of the classroom. Scott had some setbacks. He suffered an injury during football practice, making it difficult to complete written assignments. In spite of this, Scott was able to not only have everything done in a timely fashion, he excelled. Scott leads classroom discussions, often referencing reading materials that he has done outside of school. He has genuine intellectual curiosity and is sure to mentor many students throughout his career at Conneaut. Scott exhibits those qualities that make him a representative of what it means to be a true Spartan." Signed, John Arcaro, Council President, Terry Moiseo, Council Member.
Very good. Congratulations. Mr. President.
On behalf of the City Council, congratulations. Oh, here we go. There you go, you're good.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to introduce your family here?
That is my cousin, Timothy Thomas Edwards. This is my mother, Michelle Edwards, and that is my aunt, Julian Edwards.
Okay. All right, very good. Congratulations. You have anything you'd like to say? You don't have to. Okay.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay, moving on, we have a special presentation tonight. I see our Health Director, Nichelle Johnson, is on Zoom. So, Nichelle, if you want to take it away?
Everyone, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm having some internet connection issues, so I just wanted to make sure. So I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on what we're seeing here in town with COVID numbers. Right now, Conneaut City Health Department is actively monitoring 74 individuals. We have a total of 584. Currently, we have 6 individuals who have been hospitalized, giving us a total hospitalization since we started at 58. 493 individuals have resolved of their symptoms. In this past week, unfortunately, we did have 2 more deaths, which brings our total deaths to 17. I know a lot of questions about the vaccine have been coming through. Our phones are ringing off the hooks right now. I know that in a meeting earlier today with the city manager, the Conneaut Police Chief, the Conneaut Fire Chief as well. We have, right now, the Conneaut City Health Department is working with the City Manager's Office to develop an online registration for COVID-19 vaccine. And this will be put on the Conneaut City website. This is going to be a registration that we are asking for you to provide your name, phone number, address, date of birth, and any congenital health conditions that you may have. After you do provide this information, you will be contacted by the Conneaut City Health Department to then schedule an appointment to receive your COVID-19 vaccine. This next phase that we are moving into is phase 1B. This phase includes anyone over the age of 65, people with severe congenital developments or early on-site medical disorders, and K through 12 teachers and staffs. The way that the state has put it is that starting next week, we are going to start administering vaccines to individuals 80 and over. And then the January 25th, the week of the 25th, we will start with individuals who are 75 and older and have severe congenital conditions. February 1st, the week of February 1st, we will start with 70 and over, and then K through 12 teachers and staff. And then February 8th, we will do 65 and older. So that's kind of how the rundown is right now. And we will start doing clinics as early as next week. Any questions?
Nichelle, when people sign up or enroll that they're interested in receiving the vaccine, they'll be able to do that either by phone or through the city's website, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you're going to schedule appointments, so it's not like they're going to come stand in line. When you contact them off that list that they're interested, you'll give them a specific day and time, correct?
That is correct as well. Yep.
So to give folks an idea, we're going to probably use Station 3 and use the training room facility there. So there's a nice parking lot where people can come in, park, and then they'll come in the building at their appointed times. Once someone's given the vaccine, can you kind of walk through the process of what that'll look like?
So once they are given the vaccine, we will have them sit there for at least 15 minutes to monitor and make sure that they don't have any adverse effects or allergic reactions to the vaccine itself. And we'll have other information. We have things that they need to fill out too, so we'll be doing that as well while they're sitting there waiting.
And just so council is aware, we will be staffing that with an additional ambulance that's not otherwise in service around the city. If somebody would develop, say, like an anaphylactic reaction, which, you know, has happened in some few very limited circumstances where somebody has an allergy to it, you know, they're there to make sure that that person can be treated or transported quickly for further medical attention. So I just want everybody to be aware, particularly council, that we will be staffing that in addition to our regular staffing around the city. And that's going to be for, as far as I know, the period that they're administering the vaccines. So this is why we received additional CARES Act money, you know, as a local government entity, is to support exactly these activities. So we will be doing that. Just so everybody else is aware, we've been working on a new city website here for the last couple of months. We anticipate that rolling out potentially as early as Wednesday, as soon as we get this new online enrollment form on the front page. And we will likely send an electronic notification, you know, within our area that it's up, it's available, and if people want to enroll, they can. And of course, it will be broken across those tiers and prioritization that Nichelle just outlined. Happy to answer any other questions that we might have. Obviously, we're trying to do our best. We are making up the rules as we go in terms of how we're setting this up. So if we do need to make changes or something is not working out the way we intended, we'll modify our process to make it as seamless as possible and make sure that we can do what needs to be done.
I have a couple questions. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. What kind of vaccine do we have here?
We have the Moderna.
Okay, so does this require a second shot?
Yes, it does, and it's 28 days after the first dose.
Okay.
So,
So you guys, when planning this and with the ages and everything, you have that sort of work out where
Yeah.
you'll be able to logistically administer the second shots? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. And for those who have had COVID, do you not get a vaccine, or how?
So we're still recommending that they do get a vaccine. We're still learning a lot about this virus. And we don't know how long the antibodies do last once you do actually test positive for COVID. So that's why we do encourage individuals to receive the vaccine.
Now, is there still, I know at first they were saying to wait 3 months after you've had it. Is that still true? Or does it matter?
I've heard that too. I've also heard you just have to be symptom-free. I think each department kind of does it differently. We're going based off of as long as you're not having symptoms, you can be vaccinated.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
If you're specifically concerned about that or the interaction with active COVID or non-symptomatic COVID, you should consult your physician.
Correct.
Michelle, I have a couple questions that I've been hearing. Number one, have you experienced any individuals that you've administered thus far, any serious side effects from the vaccine?
No, everyone that we have talked to, the only side effect that they've had is they have a sore arm. When you receive your flu shot, you get a sore arm. They're saying it's a little bit sorer than that. The other side effect that we've also been hearing is a slight mild headache. But other than that, we have not had any other reactions.
Okay, and then the other thing is, for those who have had the vaccine, are they still possible to transmit as an asymptomatic carrier?
Unfortunately, I do not have that. I will find out that information for you though, and I will get back to you on it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for the health director? Okay, if not, thank you, Nichelle.
Thank you guys. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to citizen comments. Any citizen comments from anybody? I did receive a number of emails regarding a situation in the city which I know some of you might want to speak about, and I did respond to those emails telling them just exactly what we can do about it.
As did I, John. I received 1 email and 2 phone calls.
The same here. I received an email and 3 phone calls regarding it. And I'm not sure what to say about it. I feel bad for the people who are upset. And I understand their frustration. I understand that it's hard to think about children in the neighborhood, children riding on a school bus, seeing profanity so large and prevalent on somebody's home. It's just kind of sad. I understand the reasoning that everyone has a right to do that. Doesn't mean we all have to agree with it, for sure. I think it'd be different if we lived in an adult-only community. I don't think it would matter as much, but I feel bad that children have to see that. And being an after-school teacher, I'm sure it may come up when we get back into school next week. So I'm not really looking forward to having to address that. One thing that I will say is, like, when I saw that, I was immediately like angry, feeling, gosh, why would somebody do that to our community? And then after a few days, it makes me more just sad. And to feel like somebody has that much anger inside them, I feel bad for that person, because think how that must feel physically, to feel that way, that you have to do something like that to get your point across. And so at this point, I just feel kind of bad for that person. So if anybody knows that person, or is a family member or relative, possibly appeal to his or her better angels and know that we're part of a community. We kind of have to look out for each other. And there's other outlets to express your frustration for something that would be less harmful to the kids in our community. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say is, I hope that there's something that can be done to make this person less angry, that they would be compelled to do that. I feel bad for that person, because it must be awful to live with that kind of anger inside you. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Anything else under citizen comments? Okay, if not, communications.
I have none this evening.
Does council have any communications? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to reports of our administration, beginning with the city manager, Mr. Hockaday.
Thank you, Council President Arcaro. Had several important calls this last week, including with Jobs Ohio, ODNR, and the ODNR director on the next steps in our dredge project, as well as with the Ohio EPA. We do still have a vacancy in our water distribution manager office. We've concluded our interviews for that, and I'm hoping to make an announcement here in the next couple of days on our final selection to fulfill that open position within the city. So, and as always, we've had constant discussions and contacts, as Nichelle alluded to, regarding COVID and next steps of the vaccine rollout, not only within our community, but already internally in Unit 1A of the vaccination, which included our fire and EMS personnel and others. So it's a constant thing these days. So I'm very glad. I think our health department's done a really great job and a very efficient job of getting the vaccine distributed. They made it through that group very quickly, and I know Nichelle and Louise and her entire team are looking to get on with the more public phase of 1B. So I appreciate all their efforts there. One other quick update on demos. I know they've been on here forever and a day, but 396 Madison Street and 299 Cleveland have been demolished. They're completed. 299 was completed today and inspected. So happy to get those on the ground. I want to thank Don Gates and Jake Brand from the County Community Services Planning Office at the county for their hard work on that. I know it's been difficult in this last year to get some projects moving forward, and I know they've been overwhelmed with some workload in their office, so I appreciate their persistence in getting that project completed. Sure. We had a water line break over on Furnace Road. I think the guys did a great job of handling that in some less than savory conditions. Skip Ensman did a nice job as the acting water distribution manager of handling that. More importantly, I did include in my administrative email to council earlier our Ohio EPA survey results. That's the inspection of our plant and all the appurtenances to our plant. I would tell you to read through the recommendations as well as their findings in there. One of the things that's going to come up that we are going to have to significantly address that will become a capital item is the Clark Street Tower specifically. We know it's been aging, and it's finally to the point where they're saying it's a beyond recommendation that it needs to move forward. That's good and bad. I mean, it's good that it's made it to that findings level because now it makes our application stronger for any public assistance for that. But we do need to kind of expedite its movement forward. And I would assume it's the next probably most significant capital project in the drinking water system beyond the filtration project that's slated for the summer. So I just wanted to bring that to council's attention, tell them to look through that and certainly ask for any questions regarding that. Some past items, in fact, one of them's on here is the door locking and fob system for our drinking water facility. It's always been a recommendation that we have a more secure system around the facility. So that is a fob system like we have here at City Hall where you page in and out of the doors to restrict access to secure locations within the drinking water filtration plant itself. So that's all I have. It's pretty light report. I also wanted to leave some time for Mr. Smith, who has his 2020 report here. So I'm sure he'd like to spend some time on it.
Okay, any questions for the city manager? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the finance director, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. Last week, I gave council at the work session a update on our cash position for the city, as well as a preliminary report on income tax. On the 6th, I emailed the year-end budgetary and bank reports to council. I am currently working on supplemental reports that I should have for you at the next meeting. It's been pretty busy trying to close out the year and get everything in the budget transitioned into the next year. So like I said, I should have those for you at our next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the finance director? Okay, if not, move on to the law director, Mr. Smith.
I have no report other than the annual report that I provided council later this afternoon. And I can go through some key points on that or
Sure.
just respond to any questions people might have, or both.
If you want to go over some key points, did everybody receive the law director's report in your email?
Yep. Okay. First of all, we're very happy in the office to be working with council and the city manager for the benefit of the city of Conneaut. I believe we have a really great staff. As you know, Chris Newcomb left in October or November 1st, and he was very good. Jackie O'Donnell has joined us and is also very good. With her and Jennifer and Molly, I'm very honored and pleased to be working with a group of people that are dedicated to making Conneaut be everything that it wants to be. And I think it's a great team, and we're very happy to be there. This year, this past 12 months, we had, looks like 3 cases in front of common police courts on code enforcement. Code enforcement continues to be a primary focus for us. Last year was actually a little bit of slow for us because the housing and planning and zoning manager that position was vacant from, I think, March or April, maybe, through the end of the year. But we had enough in the works to go through 3 different common police court cases. And to my knowledge, nobody else, no other municipality in certainly Ashtabula County is doing this type of work on code enforcement. There's property at 294 Harbor Street that we just got a judgment on last month for a demolition. There's the house at 471 Liberty Street that was kind of exciting because we haven't had a drug house for a while, and this house had quite a history of drug activity, even an overdose, and we were able to obtain a court order. The fire department boarded up the house. It sat vacant for a number of months, and then we worked with a new owner and bringing it back up to code and making it a safe and a tax-generating piece of property. And we had issues at 186 Ackerman Street and 426 Harbor Street, which were also serious issues with junk vehicles and dilapidated conditions, and we're pleased that's been cleaned up quite a bit too. As a footnote, we've talked about this for a couple years. We do have 3 additional commercial properties that we obtained judgments for demolition in 2017. These are not funded for demolition through NIP, so the city has to come up with its own money to do that or find some other means to do it. One is 363 Mill Street, owned by Pete Peterson, and there's another one at 970 Harbor Street. And then the third one is the Old Farnham School. All 3 properties are an eyesore, dilapidated, and probably pose some risk to one extent or another to the public health and safety. I know that money's tight, but sometimes things have to get done, and I would urge you to try to find funding to demolish these 3 buildings and remove those issues. Our office is very active in working with the city manager on economic development projects, and we've listed a number of them for you there. It's a rapidly expanding piece and actually takes up a lot of time because these are complicated issues. There's a lot at stake sometimes, and we've had to go with outside counsel on a number of these cases because they're far above and beyond what our office is capable of handling in terms of either environmental issues or natural gas issues, things of that nature. We were finally able, it's not quite yet closed, but we're getting very close now to closing the Key Bank parking lot transaction. We just sent the deed back to the title company today, and we hope to be done with that as within the next week or so. We've also been working a lot with the Conneaut Port Authority on different projects, but most recently the transient dock project for the $238,000 that you have in front, that you are funding them and for which they are repaying. Our primary issue, our primary job is criminal prosecution and public safety. We have had, I think, as the numbers and things in the report indicate, we've had an increase in felony cases, and other cases have held about the same, or maybe have dropped in a couple instances. We've done a number of search warrants, keeping busy in that regard as well. The OVIs, I think, are almost 30 this year. I remember the first year our office came in, I think we had 3. So that shows an expanded awareness on the part of the police department and a willingness and training that council has provided to go after the OVIs and make our streets safe. What else is here? I think that's roughly about it. I don't want to get into a whole lot more, but again, we are pleased to be working with this council and with the city manager and finance director. I think there's a very good team in place, and as long as we have the necessary funding and support, we can continue to operate for the betterment of the community.
Okay, very good. I have a couple, actually it's just one question lumped in. For the benefit of the public, if you could just explain these 3 properties that have received a default judgment, that the city received a default judgment on, and it's obviously been 4 years, it will be 4 years now. What does the default judgment mean, and how does that absolve the property owner of mitigating the problem?
Okay, first of all, what happens typically in these code enforcement cases is we go through a series of written warnings, and then at a certain point we file for an injunctive relief in common pleas court. The common pleas court, there's a 28-day period where there is an opportunity to respond, and typically in a lot of these situations they don't. That allows us to go for what's known as a default judgment, which is a judgment that basically alleges that we've alleged certain criteria that warrant relief. There's been no response, and so consequently we're entitled to judgment. The judgment that we're entitled to is we're entitled as the city, and that's what the judgment is, to tear down the building, because typically a lot of these people may not have the money or the resources in order to do that. It's not unlike the other residential cases that we deal with. The big difference is that the federal government or the state through the NIP program has provided funding for residential properties, but not necessarily for commercial properties. So the city can go ahead, the city's been authorized by the court to demolish the homes and put an assessment against the property. It doesn't absolve the landowner of anything, but if the landowner doesn't have the money to do this, or otherwise refuses to do it, then the city has the authority to demolish it.
And then recoup the costs?
Try to, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Much like criminal justice, code enforcement doesn't work on a profit, or profit's not the right word for it, but we don't always get the money back that we spend in any type of criminal prosecution or enforcement of codes.
Okay.
These particular properties, certainly the Peterson properties, both have not only in addition to, if we would take the demolitions, let's say, I think the 363 mill, we were in the neighborhood of $40,000 for that demolition, and the one up on Harbor Street, 970 Harbor, was slightly cheaper than that the last time we priced it. And that's assuming the asbestos tests and stuff like that came back negative and there wasn't an environmental remediation that had to occur prior. Once the city would commit those funds, demolish the property, we could seek repayment from the property owner. If they refuse payment or have an inability to pay, we could always assess the property. In this case, we would be about 50th in line. I know a litter of state liens on income taxes on these properties. So one of the things that, particularly with commercial property, that I hope that we can move forward is not only to abate the nuisance, but then to put the property back in some kind of active status where the city is not a long-term curator of the property, that we're not mowing it, that we're not consistently providing other services to it. I don't know in either of these cases that there's any economic value or even transition of the property that we can force. So all three of these, I think we're in the neighborhood of about $150,000 in total demolition costs. We have sought in the past CDBG funding and other funding for those demolition costs, but particularly in the area of commercial demolition, we could probably use $75,000 to $100,000 in demolition costs every year on an annualized basis. And right now, that just hasn't really been a budgetary reality for us because they end up representing sunk costs that, one, abate a nuisance, but then, one wouldn't be recoverable, and then additionally may not spur any additional economic activity. So when we weigh things across the balance, we have to decide where we want to go. And not all of these factors are always known at the beginning of these property abatement issues. And then we've been very close on some funding a couple of times, particularly on the Farnham. It was originally going to be included in a county CDBG demo and was pulled for an alternative that was beyond the city's control. I was hoping this was going to be abated in 2017. And that's probably the biggest of all of them. It's partially collapsed, which means the asbestos samples are more difficult to collect and remediate. So I mean, it's a judgment call. It's always a judgment call as to what you think you can afford to expend in a year and know what you may or may not get back for them.
Okay.
Just
Mr. Hockaday.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Mr. Hockaday. We know the one property is an old gas station. And we could probably have reason to believe that it may contain hazardous waste on that site. Do you know if at any time hazardous materials were found in the building at 970 Harbor Street upon an inspection of the fire department?
Well, I don't off the top of my head know that answer. I know there was a partial roof collapse on that structure. There was a large hole in the roof structure. As far as the actual contents of the building, I'm not sure whether or not there was hazardous contents inside the building or not. I know most of the building was actually cleared by the property owner at the time. But as far as whether or not there's friable asbestos material in the roofing structure, we would have to sample for that. We wouldn't know that until we did the sampling.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Smith, you had an additional comment?
Yeah, just a footnote. We talked about this a couple of years ago, and I think one of the options that council wanted to consider was maybe doing one at a time each year, rather than trying to come up with $150,000 up front, but do it in phases or any other way you can do it. But I mean, it's something, I understand the financial conditions, but we're going to a lot of effort to clean up and encourage economic development, and these have to be taken care of. And there's more. I mean, we can go through these three, we can give you three more in another year or so.
Sure.
But it's an eyesore. It probably inhibits economic development to some degree in those areas, and it could be a risk to people. So do what you can.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for the law director? Okay, if now we'll move on to reports of our standing committees. Does anybody have a committee report? Okay, hearing none.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, John. I just want to give a quick update. I'm going to be scheduling a utilities committee meeting soon. I'm going to attend a planning meeting first so that we continue on the bed and breakfast update. So there's that outstanding, and also work again on the trash ordinance. So those two are still out there, and we do plan on tackling them. So I just wanted to let everyone know it hasn't gone to the wayside. We'll be on top of it.
Okay, thanks. Move on to liaison reports. Okay, hearing none there, move on to our ordinances and resolutions for consideration tonight. And we have the one ordinance on the table, 8820. Mr. Hockaday, is there any update?
No update. I've had a couple communications with the property owner. I'm hoping that maybe the next week or two, I sent another follow-up email. We've had direct requests and communications for responses on a proposal that we made just before Christmas. And we'll continue to push until they get back to us on our proposal. And hopefully we can put this matter to bed
Okay.
after they get back with us.
All righty, thank you. Okay, in first reading tonight, we do have 3 ordinances and resolutions to consider, and we will begin with ordinance 0121.
An ordinance to reappoint William Kennedy and George Peterson to the Conneaut Port Authority for a period of 4 years, beginning January 14, 2021, and ending January 13, 2025, and declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Hockaday.
Bill and George have done a great job for the Port Authority, and they've agreed to stay on. I really appreciate George, who's the chairman of the Port Authority. I think he's done a great job taking the Port Authority in some new directions that have been a divergence from the past. So they've tackled some great challenges. I applaud them on their victories, such as the Welton Road building, which looks fabulous. That was another commercial building that was a property maintenance nuisance that is now back down in active reuse of the property. So I think they've been a great partner with the city, and I look forward to working with both Bill and George in their coming term.
Okay. Any comments or questions regarding ordinance 0121? Now, is there a motion to proceed?
I'd like to
Mr.
declare,
Arcaro? Go ahead.
sorry, I'd like to declare ordinance 01-21 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 0121 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mozia.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozewski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy? Mrs. McVoy?
On there.
No? Okay. Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Emery, the emergency has been declared.
I would like to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 01-21.
There's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 0121. Is there a second?
Richard Goss, seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Gah.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah? Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Emery, the rules have been suspended.
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. I would like to motion to act on ordinance 01-21.
Motion to act on ordinance 0121. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Moiseo.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 0121 has passed. Move on to resolution 02-21.
A resolution in honor and remembrance of former city mayor Edward J. Griswold Sr.
Okay, Ms. McConnell, if you could read the whereases into the minutes, please.
Whereas Edward J. Griswold Sr. was a lifelong resident of the city of Conneaut and truly a man of the people, successfully raising a family of 4 children, working for years in the family upholstery and furniture business, serving first as a Conneaut City Council member and then as mayor, serving as a delegate to the 1968 Democratic National Convention, serving as administrator for the Village of Genoa, serving as an active member for every club in Conneaut, and then retiring as the, quote, chief cook and bottle washer at Pizzi's. Whereas Ed Griswold began his service to the city as a member of City Council in 1964 and was first elected mayor in 1966, where he served until March of 1971. Ed then served 2 more terms as mayor from 1980 to 1987. Whereas during his tenure as mayor of the city, Ed was instrumental in constructing the Broad Street underpass, passing a levy and building the City Hall Annex in 1987, rehabilitating the old City Hall to better blend in with the new, creating Malik Park, and, perhaps most importantly, lobbying successfully to relocate the I-90 truck scales from Kingsville to Conneaut in 1985. Whereas Ed's efforts to bring the truck scales and visitors center to Conneaut brought sanitary sewers down Dorman Road to the interstate, creating the necessary foundation for the construction of 2 schools, the rehabilitation of Days Inn, the construction of Love's Truck Stop and Truck World, and the basis for any future development at the I-90 Route 7 intersection. Whereas Ed served his family, his community, and his state with a rare blend of competency, humility, and an unmitigated willingness to work with others to benefit Conneaut. Whereas Ed died on December 21st, 2020, after a productive life that has benefited and will continue to benefit Conneaut for years to come. Now therefore be it resolved that the Conneaut City Council herein recognizes the extraordinary public service of Edward J. Griswold Sr. and his many accomplishments on behalf of the people of Conneaut, and further expresses its deepest appreciation, gratitude, and condolences to the family of Edward J. Griswold Sr. and their willingness to share Ed with our community.
Okay, thank you. Yes, there's no doubt Ed was very instrumental in the progress of the city. And I've known him for many years, and he gave me my start on both the fire and the police departments. So I'd like to definitely express our condolences to the family. Any other comments on
I would just
this
like
resolution?
I would just like to reiterate, John, what you had said and express my condolences to the family of Mr. Griswold. And he also hired me here on the Conneaut Police Department back in 1985. So that was greatly appreciated at that time. So
I would like to also echo those comments. And like the other 2 gentlemen, he hired me, Mr. Griswold hired me for the police department, and prior to that on the fire department for the city. And I really appreciate the fact that he gave me a chance to serve the city in that way. Thank you.
Okay, Ms.
I
O'Connor.
would
if
just
you-
like to express my condolences also to the family, and just hearing the fact that 3 of our members was hired by him is a true statement of his good character and good judgment on hiring these folks. So we thank him for his service and our sympathy to the family.
Thank you, Ms. Ledford. Ms. O'Connor, if you could make sure that the family gets a copy of the resolution.
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion to proceed?
Mr. Arcaro, I'd like, go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Arcaro, I'd like to waive the 3 reading rule on resolution 02-21. Thank you, Mr. Moiseo.
Here's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on resolution 0221. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Moiseo.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Kozeski, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I move we act on resolution 02-21.
It's a motion to act on resolution 0221. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Angel
Second by
McVoy
Mr.
seconds.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
A resolution 0221 has passed. Move on to ordinance 0321.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to apply for and enter into an OPWC grant agreement and OPWC 0% loan on behalf of the city of Conneaut for the water treatment plant filter replacement project and declaring an emergency.
Hey, Mr. Hockaday?
So we already passed this in 2020. It did, however, enumerate the grant amount and the loan amount, which increased from the pre-app to the final award. So it was named at 300, and the grant is for 350. So council will need to separately authorize the final application here, so we can get that filed. It has been turned into the county since December. They just wanted to clean up this ordinance so it can be processed at our district meeting coming up here later this month. So I apologize that it has to come back before you, but it's coming back before you for a good reason, not a bad reason. So we'll always take more money. So this is for the water filtration filter replacement project that involves the low lift pumps, the water filtration media replacement, SCADA within the plant, as well as a valve turning machine for our valve exercising program.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Hockaday? If not, is there a motion to proceed?
Mr. Arcaro, I'd like to declare ordinance 0321 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 0321 an emergency. Is there a second?
Tammy Ledford seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Moiseo, the emergency has been declared.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 03-21.
There's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 0321. Is there a second?
Richard Goff, second.
Thank you, Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
yes,
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Moiseo, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I would like to make a motion to act on ordinance 03-21.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 0321. Is there a second?
Tammy Ledford seconds,
Thank you, Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
yes,
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 0321 is passed. Move on to unfinished and old business. Hearing none, we'll move on to miscellaneous business.
Mr. Arcaro, I have some miscellaneous business.
Mr. Emery.
So, earlier we talked about the citizen comments and the issues with a property on the corner of Mill and 16th. And I just want to take this time to express my feelings and thoughts about it. So, I, like many Americans in this country on Wednesday last week, was shocked, saddened, and disgusted with what happened in our nation's capital. Regardless of the outcome of last year's election, it is our duty as Americans to accept the results and move on. What was seen in DC was not a display of patriotism. It was an act of domestic terrorism committed by a group of hive-minded individuals. It is with these events in mind that I feel it necessary as a council person in this great community to speak up and not ignore the ignorance that is on display in our community. I know it is hard to accept reality for some, but it is reality nonetheless. It is okay to not be happy with your government, but it is not okay to undermine the very republic you claim to love. This is why I want this community to know, as long as I am on this council, there will be no tolerance or acceptance of any conspiracy or rhetoric that drives this poisonous narrative. I am speaking to publicly denounce any displays of vulgarity, disparaging our president-elect, any displays supporting unproven lies, or anyone who believes the insurrection witnessed by the world is some bastardized attempt at patriotism. This community is full of people who have individual thoughts, and that is part of what makes our community special. It is important to have open minds and spirited discussions with your neighbors. However, when visitors to our community are greeted with vulgarity and hostility to our federal government, it reflects poorly on the community as a whole. I would prefer our visitors to feel welcomed in our community and not greeted by obscenities. I want to thank the council for letting me have this time to voice my opinion on this matter. I will implore anyone who chooses to display vulgar signs to remove them because they are not a reflection of the community at large. And I hope the individuals eventually understand the ridiculousness of their sentiment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emery. Anybody else for miscellaneous business?
I think I would like to make a comment and thank the police department, fire department, public works department, and also First Energy for their response to the traffic accident on Route 20 in the West End by Dairy Queen yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Moiseo.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that sentiment and also recognize the fire department for the day that they had yesterday. First with that crash on 20, and they ran some EMS calls. They had some other problems. Then they responded to the city of Ashtabula last night, and they were there for quite a few hours battling that fire in downtown Ashtabula, along with several other fire departments in the county. And I'd like to commend them for the job that they did yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kozowski. So I would just like to echo the comments from Mr. Moiseo and Mr. Kozeski regarding the fire and police response to our incidents this past weekend, and also to echo Mr. Emery's comments regarding the situation that we have here in the city. Unfortunately, it is in fact protected speech, and there's nothing we can do legally as a council other than reject it. And it is most definitely a sad commentary on the toxic dialogue that we have from our national leaders. And it's just a very unfortunate situation. And I too would encourage this individual to rethink his display and remove it for the better of everybody involved. There's no other miscellaneous business. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Mr. Moiseo, is there a second?
Tammy Ledford, second.
Thank you, Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, City Council for January 11, 2021 is adjourned. Thank you.
Evening.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.